ahead and call the meeting to order. Today is Friday, August 30th, 2019, at a little bit afternoon, 12:01 to be exact. This is a meeting for the LaPorte County Election Board with regards to With regards to the 2019 municipal election that will be taking place later this year. If we can all stand, face the flag. Kathy, will you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Andrew Volz is present. Amber Poff.
Present.
Kathy Krovac.
Present.
We have a quorum. First item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes for May 17th, 2019, which was the last regularly scheduled, I'm sorry, it wasn't regularly scheduled, but that was the last meeting of the LaPorte County Election Board. Do I have a motion with regards to the approval of the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is public comment. We're going to limit public comment to 2 minutes today because we've got a number of things that we've got to get through. And then we will not be having multiple people go back to the podium or anything like that. We have issues that we need to address here with regards to specifically the contested and uncontested races in both Michigan City and in LaPorte. And further, there's been some issues that have been brought to the board's attention with regards to polling locations, and Amber has been working with a work group on that, so she's going to have some information that will be presented. And obviously then if there's anybody that needs to comment on any specific item on the agenda, they can come forward and do so. So we'll move forward to public comment.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me today. My name is Sheila Matias, 1400 Lakeshore Drive in Michigan City. I'm here to talk about polling places. I'll try to use my 2 minutes very carefully. The concern remains, and we brought it to the board's attention previously, that the polling places in our courthouses are not handicap accessible. In particular, Michigan City's courthouse is not handicap accessible. It is accessible, but it is difficult, and our job is to make sure that there is no barrier to any person in our county voting and voting with ease. So I ask you to consider the elderly in our community who are trying to exercise their right to vote. You can think of an elderly person you know, but I ask you to just think for a moment. I'll use my 92-year-old mother, for example, who takes voting very seriously. She gets dressed up, she puts on her earrings, and she goes to vote. She's handicapped. It is difficult for her. If she goes to the Michigan City Courthouse, not only is it difficult for her to approach the voting, then she has to go through security. She has to go and talk to men who have guns, and for most of our elderly, that's a very uncomfortable thing. So I seriously think that we need, as a community, to find other places. We have public libraries that have good parking, are handicap accessible both in LaPorte and in Michigan City. There are post offices, there are community centers. I urge you to find places that are more easily accessible so that all folks, whether they are handicapped or whether they are intimidated by going through security measures, for many folks, whether we understand it or not, or whether it's our culture or not, going through security with people with guns, and I love our sheriffs, but they do carry weapons. They have to go through security. If they have their cell phone in error, they have to go back to their automobile. Those are barriers to voting, and we need to make sure our voting is as easy and as citizen-friendly as possible. So I urge you to consider, I know you're looking at the school system in Michigan City and their request to move our polling places, but I also ask that you consider looking at other options rather than the courthouse. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Shelley Yankee, 904 Willow Springs Drive, Michigan City. My concern is with the last election. I personally called downstate when I witnessed police officers and K-9 units at the voting polls, and they told me that that was illegal and they were doing what they could to get the officers and the K-9s out of the schools. They didn't get them out of the schools, so why were they allowed to stay in the schools when I was told by Indianapolis and their board it was illegal?
Do you want me to address that?
If you can.
My understanding, so first of all, and this has been said at least a dozen times, but we'll say it again, it was not the election board that put those officers there. The election board is well aware that officers are not supposed to be in polling places, well aware. And in fact, once it came to our attention, we immediately took action to have those officers removed. In addition to that, that is why we are pulling our hair out, trying to move the polling places away from the schools.
And if I may address that as well, in the specific contract with Michigan City Area Schools, it was my understanding that that was a requirement that the schools had. That was my understanding, that there must be an off-duty officer present. That's what I was told. But then we took the steps on election day, and we were burning the phones up to try and get in touch with whoever we needed to get in touch with. And in fact, the canine was removed. I believe you're aware of that the canine was kenneled at the police department. And again,
Yes, hours later.
well, again, we don't have the ability to simply snap our fingers and make these things happen. We executed a plan as fast and as reasonably as we could, and we achieved the results. Meaning getting the canine out of there and getting the officers out of there. But again, my understanding with the contract with the school system is it had to do with language that was specifically contained in that contract.
To protect our children when they had police officers at the administration building, which there were no children present.
Well, again, the
This isn't
administration
something that
building.
this isn't something that the election board asked for or put in place.
So what's their consequences for their actions?
It's the election board can't. We don't have standing to. So if a private citizen,
Are we going to allow this to happen again
how would you suggest
in
we remedy it?
November? I believe not only should senior citizens get the right to vote, every citizen should get the right to vote. They should not be intimidated by police officers working the polls.
I agree with you, and Mr. McCormick and Mr. Matheny and several other citizens have presented possible solutions, and we're doing everything we can to effectuate those
So who would I
solutions. Do you
speak
have
to?
any additional?
I just need to know who I need to speak to see what the consequences were for them breaking the law. Who would I speak to about that?
County prosecutor. Should have been a Mr. County prosecutor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rodney McCormick, 617 Union Street. I'm filing an official complaint today on the things that's been happening in Michigan City with our voting. And I'm just going to briefly talk about my first complaint is paragraph 1. And I remember this board telling me that they have the authority to have the state police do an investigation if there's fraud, intimidation, harassment, or any other election law violations. I came in with absentee ballots that was absolutely perfect. Nothing wrong with them. You turned me into the state police. Why come you didn't turn this, why you didn't turn in the actions of the Michigan City Police Department and the courthouse to the Indiana State Police for an investigation? I also have been brought to my attention that you also have it in your authority to turn it over to the county prosecutor. These things that have been committed are misdemeanors. But nobody's doing nothing. You're not doing nothing. You're sitting there and pretending like you don't know what to do. But you made it clear to us earlier in March that you have the authority to call the Indiana State Police. And then you also have the authority to call the county prosecutor, which you have not done. Then you talked about those dogs. I have pictures of those. Dogs, police. In our black neighborhoods, only in the precincts that are heavily black, police parked half a block away to make their presence known to scare people away from the polling place. This stuff hasn't took place. I have never seen it, but I've seen it on TV back in 1963 in Montgomery, Alabama, and other places. This is Michigan City, 2019? Yeah. 2019, and this is going on. I know that it seems like the The county, it seems like you guys are for certain groups of people and not us. And when I mean by us, I'm talking about the people I live check to check. I'm black, I'm angry, I'm upset. I've been accused of wrongdoing, and as of today's date, you haven't done anything to right that. I would like to turn my complaint over to you guys right now. And I'd like to have a hearing on my complaint and whatever results you have, because I do believe I have the right to go downstate with my complaint also after you make a ruling on that complaint. It is shameful. It is shameful, the actions or your failure to do anything about these things that are going on. Mr. Meir walked in and out of the Michigan City courthouse. Forgive me, he went into the courthouse for early voting with his family. He never even voted. But yet he was politicking right in the hallways, going in and out of the door where we cast our ballot at. I was told that I couldn't even walk in the hallway no more because it was the chute. Part of my complaint also talks about how county officials such as sheriffs, judges, other individuals are walking through the chute, violating the 50 feet radius. The same thing that you said about me. Why do the rules apply to some people and then for the people that's breaking the law, it doesn't apply to them? When is this board going to actually do something for us in Michigan City? I don't know. I don't care what's going on in LaPorte. I'm not from LaPorte. I'm from Michigan City. And every year you're moving our polling places from the King Center to Neiman. You did that midstream. In the primaries, it was at King Center. Then you moved it over to Neiman. Then I've been hearing rumors that Kathy Krobeck has a vendetta against me and the black people in our community. We just want to be able to go vote in peace. And just to talk about the elderly people, 3 of them I had to carry into the courthouse so they can vote. Got a witness back there, got Vern over there, he seen me do it. People wouldn't even help him. I had to carry him in, pull him in the chair so he can vote. And then the ladies that's in the inside of the courthouse, I don't know her name, she's very disrespectful. I mean the lady that works inside the polling place, the younger one. She wears, well, both of them wear glasses, but the younger one, I don't know her name. She's very disrespectful to us. And when I say us, I'm talking about us in the black community. We got palm cards, about this big. People hold them in their hands, cup them in their hands, put them in their pocket, get to the machine, pull it out. Our notes, and they want to use them. Guess what she's telling them? You can't do that. Not in here, you can't. So I called the county commissioner's office. Talked to Ms. Gonzalez, and somebody told her don't do it no more. She continued to do it. She won't stop. She's out of control. Then she does the same thing over at the Teamsters Union where she was working at. I know my 2 minutes is up, but it's shameful. And then she pulls out her cell phone and records individuals who's walking inside. She comes in the hallway and records me. She should not be in Michigan City. We are Michigan City. You let people from Michigan City work Michigan City. You people from LaPorte need to stay out of our city and stay out of our business. Make things right over here. You're supposed to represent us and you need to start doing it.
Dennis Matheny, 6757 West 450 North, Michigan City. I want to thank Amber for allowing me to be on the committee to work with her. And I do see some things. I've done a lot of investigating to get information for this board so that they know where they can go and where they can't go. I also looked up the state laws. There were 2 of them. And one state law, well, it's Indiana code, so I imagine it's state law, is that police cannot be within 50 foot of the polling place similar to any voter or person campaigning. The other thing is county buildings, city buildings, schools, state law says they shall allow voting in those places. It's not about may, it's about shall. And when you look up shall means there is no excuse. So those places are accessible. The other thing, Yeah, the code does say that the police cannot be there. Well, that means sheriffs, I guess, at the county buildings, the courthouse in LaPorte, Michigan City. I'm not unhappy about the metal detectors because I think it keeps a lot of things out. I've talked to Vern many times, and they've got a lot of stuff that people have been carrying in that shouldn't be carried in. I just think that I've never seen this in Michigan City before where the police had to be up at the polling places. I think it was intimidation. I think it was for one particular person that was running for office. I run for office many times. The guns in the courthouse from the sheriff's deputies never bothered me a minute. The metal detectors never bothered me. If that's the game and the law, that's the way we play the game. I don't have a problem with that. It's for everybody's security. I do have one problem, though, in regards to the people that work in the courthouse that carry their cell phones. If I can't carry mine, they shouldn't be allowed to carry theirs. That's my opinion. I think whoever made that decision needs to make it for all, not for some. I was in the military to defend everybody's rights, and I expect my rights to be equal. So thank you for allowing me to help you. I hope that I give you a lot of information. And it did take a lot of weeks to do it, only days at a time, and hours on the phone. But thank you very much for allowing me to do that.
Jason Frazier, 119 Dale Road, Michigan City. Everybody here has pretty much said what I was going to say, and I don't want to waste your time or anything, but I want to get down to, I think Rodney McCormick needs an apology with the absentee ballots. But, you know, I'm not here to tell anybody off or anything like that. Sheila's got a great, she's got a great point. Dennis and Rodney and Shelley's got a great point. Not only is it hard to get around the non-handicap accessible, it seems like, you know, at the courthouse, but of course the intimidation. I mean, we know, we're not blind people. We know this election was rigged for Mir. He sent those dogs out along with Swiss Tech to make sure they have jobs. There's no doubt in their mind. Okay, they don't want to lose. They don't want to lose to this election. The only thing we're asking for is just to have this move to community places where it's safe, more handicap accessible, and comfortable for people to vote. Is this something that we could have, you know, right away? What's actually taking, you know, what's the problem, I guess?
I can speak to that as soon. Yeah, no, that's fine, and I would prefer to speak to that when we get to that place in the agenda. But essentially, it's a whole lot of people being afraid of liability, a whole lot of people wanting to uphold whatever duty or perceived duty that they may have, and I see a lot of passing the buck as well. So I do have an update on the moving of the polling places that I'll get to, you know, once we're there on the agenda. But I'd like to say, personally, I'm hearing you guys. I'm hearing your complaints.
What is something going to be done, and why hasn't there? I'm just curious. I'm trying to beat on you.
Sure. So the
commissioners. It sounds like a bunch of procrastination.
The commissioners are the only ones who have the authority to designate polling places. Okay. They have passed a portion of that on to us, in so much as they have issued a resolution asking us to find the replacement polling places, which we've done. Yeah. And now we have to punt it back to the commissioners to finalize it. Right. A polling place can be changed up to 29 days before the election. So we're still well within the time limits to change those polling places.
Yeah,
this board does not have the authority to say, hey, this spot's a polling place.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your question, I hope? At least partially?
Somewhat, but it still sounds like procrastination. No disrespect.
Sure.
But thanks.
I just want to follow up on something real quick.
No.
Did you guys get a copy?
Mr. McCormick.
Did you guys get a finding
Mr.
from the state police?
Mr. McCormick, I had indicated what the rules for public comment were going to be at the beginning of the meeting.
You said that it's going to be open, and then once you get into your meeting, nobody else can talk.
I said that we're not gonna have a parade of people coming back up after having their 2 minutes of time.
I can wait for you to get done, then I'll meet you outside and talk to you.
Commissioner?
Rich Brzezinski, LaPorte County Commissioner, 2303 East, 150 North, LaPorte. Couple things. You're right. The commissioners have the ultimate authority on appointing the polling places. And I can tell you that over the last 2 years, myself being the only full-time commissioner and our secretary, Diane Gonzalez, we worked very hard on getting polling places that were acceptable. Dealt with Lance Werner in Michigan City. Want to make sure that every school, if it's a school, there is no contact with the students at any of them. We made sure of that. So that's not an issue. As far as the police being present, you stated it. I don't know why people don't understand it. You have no authority over the police. The police are, that's why they have a police chief. He directs the police. And if they're at polling places or near polling places, they probably have a reason. When people get harassed when they're going in to vote, or if there's a disturbance or disruptions, then you have to have a police there. And I'm glad they're there, because we don't want to have a riot at the damn police at the polling places. And for anybody to play the race card saying it's us and them stuff, totally out of bounds, totally out of bounds. It has nothing to do with the polling places at all. This is one county, LaPorte County. There's no us and them. There's no LaPorte as separate from Michigan City. We're all one. And when people want to use their personal vendetta against a mayor and try to throw the race card in on you guys and on the commissioners for doing a good job of setting up polling places, totally out of bounds and uncalled for. And we will continue. I have no desire to change any of the polling places that we work so hard to set up. We have a good system. And for people that talk about voter suppression, we have write-in votes. And we have the traveling board. There is no reason that every person in LaPorte County can't vote if they want to. Thank you.
Shameful. It is a black and white issue right now.
Public comment? Going once, going twice. Public comment is closed. Next item on the agenda is new business. Kathy, you want to introduce the approval of candidates for the 2019 primary?
Do you want me to read them?
Do you think we need to read them? I don't believe so.
I can say that LaPorte, Michigan City, they were read at our last meeting as winners, and so they will carry forward to the fall. Kingsford Heights is not going to be having an election in the fall because they all were Democrats for each position. Everybody was elected at that time, so Kingsford Heights, their primary turned into be their general. The small towns is all that we were addressing after the primary, and that was Kingsbury, La Crosse, Long Beach, Michiana Shores, Trail Creek, Wanata, and Westville. Now, the only ones that have contested races in the small towns are Long Beach and Michiana Shores. Kingsbury, La Crosse, Trail Creek, Wanata, and Westville, they do not have contested races. So they did not, and they have, each town has the ability to issue a resolution to the election board to ask not to conduct an election because they pay for them themselves. None of them did so, although they called and asked me lately if they were going to have one. That was really up to them. They did not pass a resolution to determined that they did not care to have election, but the election board can do so in their behalf. So I have a resolution here for each of the 5, if you care to pass resolution. No, it's down here. Not to conduct elections in those 5 towns.
Amber, you want to weigh in on it? Specifically, the statute that we're citing to is Indiana Code 310.76 and 310.76.1. There is, the procedure is that it must be a unanimous vote by the county election board to pass the resolution, and it would be resolution numbers 1 through 5, because we have 5 locations to where there is no a contested race. So again, there's no need for the election to be held. But in order for the election to not be held at those specific locations, we have to make a record and provide for a unanimous vote. I don't see any reason to hold an election if there is no possibility of the candidate swaying one way or another. It's in an effort to save some resources, and again, if there's no statutory requirement to hold an election in these situations, the statute and the code does allow for the election board to pass a resolution to not hold the election.
With that said, I'd make a motion to accept the resolution.
Accept the resolution, meaning
To not hold the elections in these places with uncontested.
okay, so it would be resolutions 1 through 5 as related specifically to the 5 small towns: Kingsbury, La Crosse, Trail Creek, Wanata, and Westville. I'll second that motion for resolution to pass. And with the motion and a second, all in favor of passing resolutions 1 through 5 with regards to the town elections in Kingsbury, La Crosse, Trail Creek, Wanata, and Westville. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Resolutions 1 through 5 will pass by unanimous vote, and therefore the 5 towns, meaning Kingsbury, La Crosse, Trail Creek, Wanata, and Westville, will not conduct a municipal general election in 2019. Next item on the agenda is, well, did we do the approval for Long Beach, Michiana Shores?
No.
Okay, do we need to
Probably
do
should, well, I would approve the ballot as stands today.
that for Long Beach and Michiana Shores?
Right. And I can read them if you want me to.
Ballot as it stands today for Long Beach, for clerk treasurer, Bill, how do you pronounce the name?
Dufuniak.
Dufuniak. For town council, Mary Lou McFadden, Thomas McDonald, Mike Johnstone. I'm sorry. Mary Lou McFadden as a Democrat, Thomas McDonald as a Republican, Mike Johnstone as a Republican, Kathleen Beeler as a Long Beach Party member, Robert LeMay as Long Beach Party, Nick Meyer, Long Beach Party, Anita S. Ramijas as Long Beach Party, John Wall as Long Beach Party, Jim Daner as an independent, and John Coker as an independent as well. For Michiana Shores, clerk treasurer Joan Lewis is a Republican, town council Alex Sprovstoff as a Democrat, Mike Lancioni as a Democrat, Pam Doobie as a Democrat, Dana M. Dumbriez as a Democrat. How do you pronounce that last name?
Ariga.
Bob Ariga as a Democrat, Rich Plisky as a Republican, Richard Young as a Republican, Gene Pollard as a Republican, and Michael Martinez as a Republican. Do we need a motion?
Yes.
I will make a motion for the approval of the the candidates for the towns with contested races, meaning Long Beach and Michiana Shores.
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. The next item on the agenda, Amber, this is your baby, is review and discussion of Michigan City School Corporation owned buildings as polling places. What can you tell us?
So, we've received correspondence from the school corporation that they're unwilling to continue to let the schools be polling places. We have worked pretty hard, both myself, Mr. Matheny, Diane Gonzalez. I think that Heather Stevens played a significant role in this, and of course, Mr. McCormick, you generated the original list that we started working from. So thanks to everybody who helped out with that. Just a reminder, we have no authority to change the polling places. So as requested by the commissioners, we've done some of the groundwork, but ultimately we will have to kick this over to the commissioners for final approval. There are a number of polling places, for example, Michigan City 1. Mullen School is currently the polling place. We've looked at moving that to the Red Cross. Apparently it's not handicap accessible. We've then looked at moving it to the senior center. And sort of the indication that I'm getting from Michigan City is that Michigan City has a responsibility and a duty to secure those places. I called down to, and that's why we're getting some pushback from Michigan City on some of those public buildings. So I called downstate, spoke with the attorney. He again referenced and pointed us to Indiana Code 311-8-4, stating that public buildings shall be made available for holding the election. School buildings, fire stations, and all other public buildings shall be made available without charge to a county for holding an election. The county may not be required to sign any agreement assuming liability as a precondition for the use of the public building. So that's the code section that controls here. And essentially the attorney's advice was, ultimately this is the discretion of the commissioners. You can give your suggestions to them, but once the commissioners designate a place a polling place, that's it. No one has the right to rebut that. The city doesn't have the right to really say anything about that. Once the commissioners designated a polling place, we're done. So short of the city issuing some kind of temporary injunction or restraining order for using that building, short of the city seeking an injunction and that injunction being issued by a court, once the commissioners make their decision, that's it. Having said that, here are the changes that we are proposing, and between myself and Mr. Matheny, we've been in contact with all of these places, and they're all willing to cooperate with us for polling places. So we're looking to move Elston Middle School to the Moose Lodge on Franklin Street. We are looking to replace the administration building with the Michigan Township Trustee's office. We are looking to move Edgewood School to, I think we're looking at the American Legion there. Initially we had looked at the Elks Club, but something there's not going to work out. There's still a question about where we're going to move Neiman School. The suggestion was from the Martin Luther King building, and I kind of went to bat for that. My understanding is that there were some code violations once upon a time there, making the building not up to code, and so that could cause some problems. Mullen School, we're looking at the senior center and the Teamsters Union. We're still in discussions with Southwind Emmanuel Lutheran Church. So those are the places that we're looking to move this election cycle. Again, we have until 29 days before the election to solidify those polling places, and so we're still well within our time window there. Of course, there's a public policy concern in moving polling places mid-cycle like this. You want to make sure that the notices are out and plenty of time for everybody to understand what the changes are and arrive at the correct polling places. So I'd really love to have these finalized in the next week, just so that everybody has plenty of time to make arrangements to vote where they need to vote. There's been significant discussion about moving early voting not only to the libraries, but also expanding it to some of the smaller libraries in South County as sort of satellite polling locations. Most of our smaller libraries, especially in South County, just don't have any way to accommodate that. The library in Hannah doesn't have a meeting room. I've got some notes on this. And we're also getting some pushback from the two big libraries in terms of hours and concerns about security. And I think that Kathy has some things that she wants to say about the libraries in particular.
Well, as far as the libraries go, there's a number of concerns that kind of play a part in this. And I would think it would have to do with other places that we might pick. You have to make sure that you can accommodate a large crowd of people. You have to make sure that you have parking accessible for a large crowd of people, along with handicap parking. You have to be able to secure the machines at night, make sure they're locked up in a room somewhere where nobody can get to them. And when they're outside of the courthouse, we can't guarantee that. The courthouse we can, because they're locked up in the election room. But in the libraries or anywhere else, we cannot. You also have to have some kind of liability insurance so that if somebody were to fall or whatever in the area where they're voting, that the county would be able, or someone would be able to cover some kind of insurance if someone were to get injured. Staffing it, making sure that we are able to stay there from the hours that are allowed, which on early voting is 8 to 4. I know I had some others.
I think you've hit all the major ones.
No, I had another one.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, voters registration. When they're voting in the courthouse, they are constantly in connection with the voters registration office at both courthouses. We would have to be able to have accessibility to the library to be able to get in there and deal with the voters, or to have the voters come to the courthouse and change whatever it is they need to change or file. Also, if the machines break down, we have to be able to get in there and fix it. Paperwork that is crossing both the clerk's office and voters registration at both of the courthouses is constantly being tracked back and forth throughout the day when we are open to vote. And you would not, I mean, we would be driving over to wherever that is to take care of the paperwork. Happens a lot. The workers that are in the courthouse that work there during the absentee voting are in my office, in and out all day long. So it does create a problem when you're moving it outside of the area where both the clerk and the voters registration offices are located.
Is that it?
Well, that's off the top of my head. I didn't write it down, but there's a lot of issues when you move it.
So the complications associated with moving to the library are many and varied. I think that some of them are very easily addressed with the use of a cell phone. I think that a lot of the communication issues that we're worried about or speculating about are pretty simply overcome by just picking up a phone and calling somebody. The hours, voting hours might need to perhaps be adjusted. I think that there are ways that we could overcome this, but again, it does present some significant challenges. Personally, I do agree with some of the concerns about voting in the courthouse, especially as it relates to it having a chilling effect on voters. I truly believe that some people are adverse to coming into this building. I'm an attorney, this is where I go all the time, and sometimes I feel a little weird walking in. Somebody with a warrant, this would absolutely be a deterrent to someone with a warrant. The whole process of having to, empty your pockets and take everything back to cars, I get it. I understand where the complaint about the courthouses comes from. I wasn't aware that the courthouse in Michigan City was so difficult for folks with mobility issues. But I agree, we don't want there to be any challenges to voting. And if a person doesn't want to vote by mail, they should have a polling place where they can come in and vote. So with that, I suppose the most appropriate thing to do in this move of polling place journey is to perhaps make a motion to pass this list on then to the commissioners for them to finalize, as there's nothing that we can do with the list anyway. And I'm open to discussion on that. I'm really not sure what the next step procedurally is.
The concern that I have is moving it in the middle of an election.
Which is also my concern. We went through this in 2018 already once, and when we moved out of some of the school buildings into the 5 that we're talking about today, it was all approved by the school corporation. We had to send cards out to all the voters so that they're all aware. It took a lot of mailing and expense to let everybody know that they're moving on to a different location. Now, we voted in those locations in May, and I hate the fact of moving them in the middle of an election cycle, because that's what you're doing. They just went there in May, and you're going to send them somewhere else in November? It's difficult.
Can we respond on this situation now or not?
Sure.
I know you won't, Dennis Matheny, I know you won't have time this election, but one of the things that I think is so critical, which we used years ago when we defeated Michigan City twice for their $37 million building, were voting centers. I think it's so critical that we have voting centers. And the way we did it when we had the school corporation, Michigan City, it was the Cool Spring Fire Department and Michigan City Hall downstairs where the emergency management area was at. And it worked very well. Everybody that wanted to vote could vote. There was no problem with the police. Everything worked well. So I think for the next election next year, you really need voting centers. It minimizes the amount of people. I have heard that it costs more. I don't believe that it could cost more because you have less people. You have more machines in an area. I never seen a very big line. You have less people, so it's going to be less cost. I think an election runs about $80,000 an election, and I think you could minimize that by having it in voting centers. And under the state law, Indiana code, voting centers come under a different section than regular voting. So that's something that needs to be looked into. I did look into it. I didn't bring those Indiana codes, but I certainly think having it condensed in a one location or two locations in the city of Michigan City and LaPorte is going to minimize the amount of traffic. It's going to minimize the amount of people you have to pay for. I just think it's more convenient, and you don't have to keep moving it all the time. When I was trustee, we had people coming in 2 minutes after 6 because they went to one polling place and it was changed to another polling place. If you set these centers up and you maintain them, Indiana code says you have to use buildings shall, and they have to be shall. It's not that they can say, well, we want them this year, but we don't want them next year. Shall doesn't mean that. So voting centers, in my opinion, are going to be great. Once the people get used to it, you won't have them coming in 2 minutes after 6 saying I was sent from a different place. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
And can I respond to that, Dennis? Back in 2017, we didn't have election. That's our off year. And I approached the commissioners at that time for vote centers, and I was turned down. To do that, you have to, there's a number of things you have to do. You have to upgrade your machines, because our machines are not capable of holding that a number of votes. You have to be able to hold a lot more votes than our machines can hold at a vote center. They suggested that e-poll books.
They're required now for poll centers.
And they are required now. Back then, they were suggested. Mm-hmm. You have to find a location that's big enough for a lot of parking. So, I mean...
And internet then, too.
And internet accessibility. So, those were the issues. We had a, I don't know, we had a kind of a estimate that was going to cost to do all this, and the commissioners said no.
Can't cost any more than the attack that the county had on the computer system.
Well, it did.
You have a good day.
Here we go.
Rodney McCormick, I know personally that the King Center is not in violation. I know that for a fact. I was there when Randy Novak came in and gave us our approval and walked out the door. But I got a suggestion for the early voting. Just move it to the town trustee office, Michigan and Cool Spring. And we have two sides of town that we can vote on.
What about LaPorte?
I'm not from LaPorte.
Well, we gotta fix this.
Yeah, I
for the
understand
whole
what you
county.
have to do, but it seemed like you guys ain't fixing nothing in Michigan City. And we just had a gentleman step up and just talk about what's going on. It seemed like everybody's talking about what's best for Michigan City. He don't even live in Michigan City. And for him to even say stuff that he's saying, I'm offended. Nobody has a personal grudge against the mayor. We just don't like his job. And you can, if you just look at, so many people are turned off. We got a whole precinct, I think it's MC, I can't remember what it was, 24, 20, or 18, I can't remember which one it was. We got 4% voter turnout. Because there's no busing for Canterbury area. That's the area that's affected. There's no busing for the Canterbury area. It doesn't stop at the polling place. So you got a lot of people that's living check to check. And it hurts. And people want to vote. And then we have people that don't want to vote because they think it's going to be the same old. And we have people like, we hear commissioner elected officials like him telling us that things aren't wrong and people got a personal vendetta against a mayor. For God's sake, I just went to jail and there was no charges that could be filed against me, but they filed some and then later on it was dismissed. And now we got federal lawsuits against that. It's shameful, and if that doesn't work for the early voting part of it, maybe do early voting at the courthouse after hours. Just a suggestion. Just want to make sure that we get something done here, because we cannot take this no more. And you inconvenienced the people back in last May, that's true. And most of the people you live in the 6th Ward, correct?
Yeah.
You voted at the King Center. Did you have any problems out there? A lot of people don't understand because they're not from there. I suggest that you go talk to the people in the neighborhoods like I do on a daily basis. And they're tired of the fiasco. They're tired of it. They just want to have a consistent polling place. They don't want to be harassed or intimidated. And then all these people saying that there's problems. It's kind of funny that police presence only was present 1 year. There has never been this kind of problem in Michigan City. Only this 1 year. Because they want to keep their jobs. And they want to make sure that we, the people that's upset and using a race car, want to vote the mayor out. Thank you.
I'm white now, for the record.
Chase Frazier, 119 Dale Road. I don't see what the big deal is, Mr. Commissioner, about moving the polling places or anything like that. Regardless of his thoughts or race card, whatever you want to, do and get mad at us or whatever, we do vote for you people.
Just a reminder, you've got to address the board.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know. Was it
That's okay.
Russia?
That's okay.
I mean,
You can continue making your comment.
I could talk to him, no big deal. But I don't understand if you got some people coming in just asking to move it. There's a lot of people actually asking to move it. And as far as the Neiman School, there is a church on the corner of Eastwood and I know these people, Eastwood and Friar Road, willing to take the voting polls out there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to keep your time, sorry. But yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous, man. There's more than just us. There's a lot of people. We're just frustrated. I'm hoping that you'll hear us and at least probably do something instead of use, anger against whatever or make assumptions. We don't have rights in Michigan City over voting polls. All of a sudden, it's I don't know why we can't have them back in the community centers. They've gone back and forth. They've always mostly been the community centers. And there's not been one legitimate threat, to have cops at a voting poll. It's just
When
ridiculous.
you say community centers, are you referencing like township trustees' offices or what? Like the Fifth Ward
anywhere
building?
from churches to Martin Luther King Center. That's out by my house. I have no problem with that.
Sure. Okay.
I mean, there's different people there. I'm not here to bag anybody. I just would like to see that done, if you could, please, just for a moment. Hold the anger back against Rodney McCormick or whatever it is, and at least listen to us. And I know to her it seems like a big deal to move in the middle of it, but you know, the manager at my job, if I was to say no, we're not moving, I'm not doing that job, or I'm not working, and I apologize, you guys aren't peasants, but you are public servants and supposed to listen to us. And that's all we're asking is to be moved by November. We would be totally pleased over that. No cops present, because we've never, ever, 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 ever had any violence at a voting poll in Michigan City. All of us that are over here, including Dennis Matheny, we want Michigan City to be a great town. So, and I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to attack, I'm just trying to talk common sense. But thank you.
I'd like to address this just one more time to make this perfectly clear. This isn't a white thing, it isn't a black thing, this is a citizen thing. And we want you guys to follow up and do what you're supposed to do. You guys are supposed to protect the citizens, and we feel like we have nobody backing us up for anything. There's so many illegal things going on in Michigan City, and there's no consequences for anything. And I'm afraid if something isn't done, what's going to end up happening is the citizens are going to rebel and come together as a community, and then Michigan City's really going to have a problem.
I'm not sure what, I'm not sure.
You're not sure about what? I'm not.
Is that the end of your is that the end of your
waiting
comment?
for somebody to respond to it.
Okay, thank you.
No response.
You have to.
Well, I mean,
Well, they called the state
election board
police,
is
and
not,
the state police are kind of just as corrupt as in Michigan City.
the election board is not responsible for quote unquote all of the illegal things going on in Michigan
Okay, but
City.
do you understand that I'm the one personally that talked to the election board that day? Do you understand that? And do you understand nothing that day was done immediately?
But it was though.
It was not. I was there personally, were you?
I'm the person on the election board.
Are you the person that I spoke to?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're asking for.
I hope, if it was me that was the mayor of Michigan City and I saw that no one wanted me to be there, I would bow out, just like the chief of police in Michigan City should bow out. But that's never going to happen. But I do hope that this is changed before election time again.
I've made it pretty clear that we're trying to change it. Anything else?
So, are you making a formal motion to refer the list, or I guess I don't know how to respond necessarily to what the resolution was from the commissioners.
Don't we get a recommendation?
What do you mean?
The board has some kind of a recommendation.
Well, yeah, I think
I don't know that we've all made it. You
Sure.
did.
Okay. All right. I understand. Sure.
I do
So
not.
do we
I'm not
want
in
to-
favor of moving it in the middle of an election cycle.
Okay.
That's how I feel. I'm not against moving it. Not in the middle of an election cycle. And then I have to, the voters registration has to go through and notify all the people. We're talking about 5 locations. And I'm not in favor of moving anything out of the courthouse because it becomes.
Responding to shots.
I'm not.
No. I'm not in favor of moving out of the courthouse because it causes issues. I'm not against or opposed to the other ones. But I do not think it should be done during the middle of an election cycle.
I guess, that's what I come back to, but
I don't know.
So I understand that ideally this wouldn't happen in the middle of an election cycle, but I think that we've got some pretty significant problems and we've got some pretty founded concerns, I think.
Well, it never was a problem before this last May.
I understand, but it's a problem now. And
and I guess what I'll go back to then is ultimately a recommendation from the board doesn't mean anything anyways because the commissioners have the authority to do whatever they want to
it's
do.
ultimately their decision.
table it.
We don't have time to table it.
Have a special meeting.
As the clerk, it causes a lot of extra work, not that we can't do it, but it changes all of our records. It changes all of our paperwork. The voters registration has to notify everybody about the change, which is mailing. The courthouse, changing the courthouse is a huge problem.
I think we need to focus on the issue. Obviously, we have an election coming up that we need to focus on with related to specifically the schools. And the indication from Michigan City Area School Corporation that polling places are not to be in the schools anymore. And they by statute don't have the ability to make that determination. But then we wind up in a TRO situation or an injunction situation, and we're wasting everybody's time. Why don't we just move it for this election, get it out of the schools? Again, I don't understand why it's constant moving and shifting of polling locations. I don't understand it. It's been that way since I've been on this board, that 1 year it's moved, 1 year it's moved back. I don't understand what is going on with that. And I personally am in favor of voting centers. And I have made my position clear through every administration that's gone through the commissioner's office, and we're told, no, you can't do it. So I have a problem then with being directed to find a new location when we've provided the mechanism to solve these issues where it won't be dealt with again, but then be told no, and now 2 years later, we'll figure it out. So I have a problem with that. It would be my opinion, move them out of the schools this election. And I think if the locations are available, I think that's what needs to happen.
I agree.
But as far as moving it out of the courthouse, I'm not in favor of that. As far as going to the libraries, its infrastructure will not support a voting center at a library in Hannah. That's not going to happen.
No.
It's not going to happen in Fish Lake.
No, but it could happen in LaPorte, Michigan City.
Correct.
LaPorte doesn't have the parking.
No, that's part of the problem.
Are we receiving that many early voters? Are we seeing that many early voters that we need parking for 35 people at one time?
Well, in the municipal, not necessarily. Last year,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
They were lined up outside.
LaPorte Library has contracted with Horizon Bank before to use their back parking lot, and I'm sure that could be done again.
I am not in favor of moving out of the courthouse. It causes all kinds of, you guys don't deal with that. I do.
I understand.
It's just a matter of time for somebody to file a lawsuit against you.
I'm sympathetic to all of the disruption that this causes and all of the extra work that this causes. I'm sympathetic to that, but I still stand by my recommendation, respectfully.
Make a motion.
Do we need a motion to refer this over?
I don't know that we necessarily do. Because a motion will be for what?
Right. We're not taking any official action.
Because we can't take the official action that's being asked that we do.
Right.
And ultimately, it's up to the commissioners. So we've got two sitting commissioners here. You've heard the discussion. You've heard the pros and the cons both ways. The ball's in your court to make the decision.
I don't know if either of the commissioners want to speak to this.
Hi, Sheila Matias again. My understanding is that the election board has always made referral of polling places to the commissioners who then approve. I just was texting our county attorney, and that was his understanding. So, I'm willing to make decisions if you want to refer it to us, if that's the best practice, but that doesn't seem to me to be the practice that has happened in the past. So I just wanted to bring that up from a historical perspective, that apparently the election board refers locations, and then the commission generally approves the
I
locations.
think, Sheila, that is the way it's been handled.
Okay.
I know that Diane in your office, she used to work in voters registration,
I'm aware of
and
that, yes.
she is very, very familiar with all the polling areas,
Right.
and has been to all of them, and is familiar with parking, accessibility. She knows the folks that she talked with during the time when we were trying to acquire those areas. So I have worked with her closely because she is familiar with all.
Right.
A lot of the polling areas in last year, I did not go out to take a look at it. She had been there and assured me that everything was good. We didn't have to go out there. A couple of them during the year I did go to, but I kind of leaned on her to give us that the okay, I guess you would say.
So if I could interrupt, I've got the guide here. The county commissioners, or in Marion County, the mayor of Indianapolis, must designate polling places not less than 29 days before Election Day. Precinct polling places are permanent and remain unchanged until the Board of County Commissioners or county executives order otherwise. As a result, county commissioners or the county executive, the mayor of Indianapolis, is only required to designate polling places if there is a change, and that's IC 311-8-3.1.
But I think that also means that, because when we end up picking the polling places, I come to the commission and get your approval. Because at the back of the polling places, there's a sheet here that you sign.
Right.
So we submit it, and then you approve it. So I think that is what that speaks to.
So I guess that's my point, is that generally speaking, this board submits the polling places, and then we sign off on it, unless there's some huge issue that we need to address as the county executives. So that's my understanding of the process, and I just wanted to be sure that we were all on the same page.
If I can make a suggestion, I think the ones that you had named as alternatives, we have to go out and look at them.
Okay.
We have to go look at them, and we have to speak with them and find out, if they comply with our needs. And then if that's the case, we'll turn it over, and then we'll change our list like this, and then the commissioners will approve it,
Okay. Thank you.
as I see it. We have to go talk with them, we have to go look at it, we have to make sure it's accessible, find out what their hours are, parking, all that.
If I may, you're correct, sir. Changing the polling places every year, not a good idea. That's why, as Mr. Matheny said, you have people coming in late because they didn't know that their place had changed. It is a lot of work on the clerk's office to do that. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, totally unnecessary. As Kathy stated, Diane did go to every place to make sure that there was no issues. None of the schools, none of them, do you have any contact with the students. Not there. You walk in, you vote, you walk back out. You can't find a student because you're not exposed to them. Okay? So that's not an issue. As far as voting centers, I've always been in favor of voting centers. I agree with Mr. Matheny. I've always been in favor. But I understand that in order for that to happen, that all three commissioners have to vote unanimous on that. And I can tell you that when it came up before, I wanted the voting centers. It's initially more money because you got to buy all new computers. I'm probably going to have to do that anyway. But after you get that established, it will cut the cost of holding an election way, way down. And I believe it's time that LaPorte County come into the 21st century here and do voting centers. Again, it takes the vote of all three commissioners, and I can guarantee you that I will vote for the voting centers. I think it's a good idea. So, have at it.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so where does this leave us?
I don't think there's anything formally that we need to do. Kathy wants us to personally inspect these. I know that conversations have been had with all of the polling places. Kathy wants them personally inspected. But I think that we can have our recommendations updated into the commissioners by next Wednesday. And then again, ultimately it'll be their decision, but I don't think that the board has to rule one way or the other Do we have to unanimously approve the recommendations? I mean, that's not anywhere in the code.
I don't believe
So that's
so.
why I'm not sure what to do with it.
Well, I mean, the discussion has been had. I think we've got the information out that we need to get, and obviously if we need to look at these places, we can get that done and then present something to the commissioners, whether it's this week or the next week.
And I can go out, I do live in Michigan City, and so I'd be happy to go scout them out.
Sounds good. Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda, announcement of public test. Public test for the 2019 municipal general election will occur on September 27th at 10 a.m. Obviously, notice will go out prior to that, but that's just kind of putting it out on the radar that the public test of the voting machines will occur on that date. We're now to other business. Board member comments. Amber, do you have any comments?
Not at this time.
Kathy?
No.
Myself, I don't have anything either. So I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning this meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.